Game day edition of the program is the Alabama Crimson Tide making their way back to the NCAA Tournament picture for the first time since 2012. James Hardy with you, along with Coach Wimp Sanderson. And before we get to Coach Wimp Sanderson, we got to thank Taco Casa for sponsoring our first hour since the start of this program's history back in 2015. But also, we're going to take a trip down memory lane here in just a moment with Coach Wimp Sanderson as far as his first NCAA trip when it came to a 69-68 victory, basically in what turned out was pretty much a road game up in Uniondale, New York, folks. And Coach, we're talking about up around Long Island, and then Sweet 16 game after that against one? North Carolina up in Raleigh. But before we get to your thoughts all the way back to 1982, Coach, because you know what, today Avery Johnson will be coaching in his first ever NCAA tournament game as a head coach at the collegiate level. He has coached in the NBA Finals with the Dallas Mavericks, but a little different experience coming up for Avery Johnson as far as that NCAA Tournament March Madness coaching experience. And Avery Johnson talked about that on Tuesday before boarding the plane for Pittsburgh.
Yeah, and you know, it's still basketball. At the end of the day, you got to get back on defense. Alabama has to pass the ball at players that have Alabama jerseys on it. So whether it's in the NBA or college, it's the same thing. Because if you don't, then that's going to lead to transition baskets for our opponents. We have to rebound. We got to space the floor properly. So whatever level you're on, it's still basketball. Now, I would say, you know, on this level, obviously it requires a lot more patience because you're dealing with young guys. And nobody on our team has experienced this. We have a lot of guys, you know, and I wanted this for Riley Norris, and unfortunately he can't participate in the tournament. So we just got a bunch of young guys, and I just think they feed off of my energy. And that's why here recently I've just tried to teach and talk to them and work with them. And, you know, I've kind of reduced the decibel level in my voice, trying to get them to respond to what I'm talking about. But it's still basketball, and it's basically win or go home.
Win or go home for Avery Johnson today, but also certainly when Coach Sanderson was taking Alabama to NCAA tournaments almost on a yearly basis. And back to 1982, as we mentioned, Coach, the first opponent that you played, St. John's, and then won that game to go to a Sweet 16 game then because the field hadn't expanded to 64 teams at that point. And, Michael Jordan and Dean Smith's North Carolina Tar Heels slipped past y'all in that Sweet 16 game, 74-69. But, Coach, thanks to the magic of technology now, up on RollTide.com, actually dug in the archives, and they've got a little kind of a statistical rundown as far as the stats from that season. The leading scorer in both of those games for your teams, Coach, Eddie Phillips, with 16 points, both against North Carolina in the Sweet 16, and that first-round win against St. John's up in Uniondale.
Well, when I found out we were playing St. John's in New York, basically, I thought to myself, this is going to be some basketball game, and we had a good team. We didn't have a great team, but we had a good team. And it was a very tough pick. I don't know where we were, 8 or 9 probably as far as the seeding was concerned. I walk in that arena nervous. And as you probably know, maybe you don't know, there are the Indians, St. John's Indians. And they did everything Indian you could do. Except smoke a peace pipe. They didn't do that. But it was packed. It was really, really packed. And Lou Carnesecca is the coach of St. John's and probably one of the great coaches in the history of collegiate basketball. And I knew he'd have his team ready to play. And so we played, and it was hard for me because maybe it was the first NCAA game. We had been to NIT a couple of times, but it was the first one because James looked it up for me. and it was a back and forth game, and we win it by one. I want to say to you, they had the last possession to win it. We went into a press. We were down, so we went into a press. They turned it over, and I think that they had the last possession, and we won the basketball game by 1 point. Ray Perkins was the coach at, I believe this is right, with the Giants. And I think it was his birthday. And so we came in and had cake. Of course, I was all excited about winning the game until I found out we had to go. Did we go to North Carolina after that?
That's right. Actually, I had to go to Raleigh for that game.
So anyway, for whatever reason, try to be cute or whatever, Dean Smith, we were supposed to sit on, it doesn't really matter, but I'm just telling the story. We were supposed to sit where North Carolina State sat. And instead, Dean Smith took his team and sat there, which I didn't really care. I don't know what it was, but I visited with the NC State coaches who passed away. We practiced. We had a good team. They had gotten a lot better. We played our fannies off, and we held Michael Jordan until 11. Now you're going to expect me to say this because they call, as you know, most of the people know I cry a lot, or that I'm never satisfied with whatever. But all I try to do on this radio show is, without getting myself fired, is tell you what happened. And we got a double screwing in that game by the officials. The official in that game was a guy who was well known. They had T-shirts about him in other games. Very arrogant, very everything. We held Michael to 11 points. We played as well as we could play. They won, I think, the national championship. I could be wrong, but I think they won the national championship, and they beat us 5. We had a problem. We had a problem in that the lighting in the arena was not satisfactory to CBS. So they came in and they added a whole bunch of really hot lights to make it better for them. I wasn't wearing a plaid sport coat at that time. That plaid stuff hadn't even come into effect yet. And I had on a light blue coat. And I should have, and I didn't, for whatever reason, I didn't take it off. But it was completely 100% wet when I got through, and one of the toughest games I ever tried to coach in. And when I got through and went into the dressing room and talked to the kids, I just took the coat off, wiped it up, and threw it in the garbage can. And it was a bitter, tough loss. And I don't know, I can't remember what seed we had, but to play St. John's in Uniondale Arena, then have to come back and play North Carolina. I felt like they were wanting to get rid of us, and they did in the second game. No. So I don't remember. All I know is we did a great job on Michael Jordan. We played good. We got no break on no calls at any time. And I did it. And I don't complain about every game. For the people that listen to this show, I got very few technicals. Very few. I almost got a bunch, but the key word in there is almost. And when they put the box in, they didn't have the box, but they put the box in, I got to the edge of the box, and the officials watched to see if I was getting over. John Clockerty's been on our show before and said that they said, if he gets out of the box, get him. And John got me, but I didn't get a lot of technicals. But I can tell you now, of all the games I coached at Alabama, officiating, that was the worst. And one other one in Nebraska, but I won't go over that one.
So, Coach, before we go to the timeout and get JC in, what lessons did you take from that NCAA tournament that helped you down the road in future NCAA appearances?
Well, I think I just think that staying calm in it, hanging in there in 1 point wins. Hanging in there in disappointing losses, maybe I felt comfortable with it, and I felt comfortable with our kids. I was totally different than coaches before me. You probably can recognize that from my talking, and I guess maybe the way I look, people say. But I was somewhat different, and but the difference ended up working. It didn't start off real good because they had a hard time, but it worked out really good. But I learned a lot, and coaching in the NCAA is a real thrill.